Thanks so much for staying with us. I want to welcome our next guest tonight. I'm very pleased to have our next guest both working with us here this summer on Saratoga Live, but also joining us on stage, Laffit Pincay. Laffit, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. What a turnout. This is awesome.
They came for Gabby.
No, naturally. I'm sure the crowd was 5 times as big when Gabby was up here.
Yeah, a lot of people
read
left.
those promos like much better than I do, by the way.
I'm trying to learn from you, actually. I'm trying to emulate your hosting. How's your summer going so far?
So much fun. I'd come in for races over the weekends at Saratoga for the last 7 or 8 years, and it was in Thursday and meetings Friday and a show Saturday and gone the next day. But this is my full summer at Saratoga, and it's been an absolute blast so far.
Are you enjoying it? You going out and visiting some of the many great places?
No, if
here?
I'm not in the trailer prepping, I'm on the set with you doing the show or back at the apartment prepping. It's a ton of work. We're on all day.
It is. I did see you out a couple of times.
Like
Monday nights.
Not
or
on
Sundays.
a school night. Yeah, Sundays and Mondays.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? You're being good. It's early.
Yeah, it's there. We are on for like 8 hours a day. There isn't a lot of time to really enjoy and do all this kind of stuff in Saratoga. Yeah.
It's a lot, but it's fun.
It's a blast. Working vacation.
How would you compare doing these shows, which obviously are every day, versus working for NBC, because you have done a lot of TV for NBC?
It's the difference of, having several days to prepare for, a 2-hour show on a Saturday, and you have, several meetings, and every minute, every segment, everything is covered for beforehand going in. You don't have this type of airtime to prepare for, where we're on, as a host, 15 hours during the course of a week, right? And we'll have a meeting the morning of the show, and you'll have a rundown to work with the night before, the morning of. So there's a lot more. I wouldn't go as far as calling it, cramming and being there every day. You're going to learn so much just through osmosis, but you don't have quite the same amount of time to prepare. But the crew here does an incredible job. Amazing. In terms of what's being asked. I mean, the behind-the-scenes guys, and you have producers that are in the truck working a live show that get off the air at 7:30, and the following day they're responsible for another 3-hour show, and it's overwhelming, but they do a terrific job.
Right. I think that in our shows, they see you or me or the other people on the air, and we get all the attention, but they're really doing all the work.
The behind-the-scene guy, they're the ones that absolutely make this happen.
Yeah. It's daunting. I mean, I'm up late, and I do stuff late at night, and different producers, Terrence, Evan, and Josh, they send us emails with the rundowns at 1 in the morning and stuff. I don't know how they do it.
They don't. It doesn't. Like I said, it doesn't stop for the producers, of which they're in the back of the room.
And they're here
There's
supporting
Evan.
us.
Hello.
Despite
Terrence.
all of that, they're supporting us.
That's the magic behind the cameras that actually
give
make
them
it
a
all
hand.
happen.
It is true. It is true. And all the people in the truck. And it's fun working. And one of the things that's been nice this summer is working with a lot of different people. Obviously, I've worked a lot with Greg and Paul as well. But having a chance to work with Gary, and worked a little bit in the spring and summer with Gary, but not much. You and I were at Oakland together, and that was fun. But it's nice to work with some different people. Acacia's joined us as well. Obviously, Maggie, who does a sensational job. But Maggie and I have been working together for years. But it's nice to work with some different people as well.
It's a terrific, like I said, it's unbelievable, and that everybody uniquely brings something different to the table. I wouldn't, bet on any 2-year-old race in New York, Aqueduct, Belmont, Saratoga, without hearing what Maggie has to say about that particular field. Her eye in the paddock. We joke, we rely on pedigree, we rely on action on the tote board for a 2-year-old race, and Maggie's eyeballs. That's what we go by, and her unique perspective of what you can see. One thing on paper, it's what she sees in person with the horses right in front of her that is mind-boggling and so sharp, and in many cases leads you to, for that particular racehorse is a pretty good gauge on how they're going to perform in that particular race.
Now, getting back to you and getting involved, and I agree about Maggie. I mean, she's invaluable. She does something that very few people can do. I mean, as far as handicappers, people handicap. They have opinion. They listen to opinions. They have different opinions. That's an ongoing argument. A lot of people are very good handicappers, and I think I'm a genius, but I'm wrong all the time, I think I act like I'm never wrong.
You got creamed pretty good today, the first shift that we worked together. I'll say that.
I won late.
Yeah, you did win late.
I had a good day.
Your horse in the feature one.
I used him. Yeah, I used him in Rocketry, and I did well. It worked out. Today ended up being okay.
So you're in a much better mood than you were during the course of the show.
Being with you,
which does me no good
mood
in terms of the show
with
earlier.
you all day. Hey, don't even give them. You know, Gabby already picked on me, and now if you're going to do it, they're going to start to really believe it's true. Obviously, your relationship to racing began with your dad. Talk about your father, who is obviously one of the greatest riders who ever lived. Is he what got you involved in racing?
Thank you, first.
Well, he
yeah,
was.
I think
he was. He was. Everyone knows it.
I think that as a kid, there was an interest in just, building a bond, taking an interest in what Dad did. And the racetrack is very different now. It's much more family friendly for kids now than it was when I was growing up. You didn't necessarily take the kids to the racetrack on a weekend. So I grew up, I knew that Dad rode, and I knew he was an athlete, and he did something important, and he did something dangerous, but I didn't really understand the concept of horse racing until a little bit later on. And I started, digging through these boxes of VHS composite tapes. Every time back then that he would win like a stakes race, Hollywood Park, Del Mar, Santa Anita, they would give him a VHS composite tape. Started watching those and started watching his old Breeders' Cup tapes and that kind of thing, and took interest in what he did, partially because I just wanted to, again, it was that father-son bond. And all of a sudden we had something else to talk about. And that's where it really started. And I would say, I don't know, in my mid, 14, 15, 16, and I started bugging Dad about, like, hey, do you have a good 3-year-old for the Derby? Do you have any good Breeders' Cup mounts this year? And he's like, hey, like, when are you going to get around to your geometry? Your grades suck. But that's how that was, for us, it was a bonding experience. And eventually, because I was obviously never going to ride, I figured if I couldn't be, involved in the sport that closely, I wasn't around horses, so training or riding or any of that. Television seemed like a natural fit.
So how did you get involved with doing TV? Did you just get right into working racing?
I felt that there were certain races he rode in that to me always meant a little bit more the way the event was covered. The old NBC Breeders' Cups, with Tom Hammond and with so many incredibly gifted sportscasters that would make the event seem bigger than it even was, and being drawn to it, that I think was the initial attachment. Like, this is something that I'd like to be involved with moving forward. As I started to understand horse racing, loved sports, played a lot of baseball, but that was never realistic as far as doing something long term. But wanting to be close to sports, that seemed like the logical fit.
Have you ever done any broadcasting besides horse racing?
Yeah, my first job was News 12 in the Bronx.
Really?
In the late 90s, yeah.
Wow.
And everything was surrounded around sports that were happening in the Bronx. There was so much saturated coverage of the mainstream, of the Yankees and the Mets and the Rangers and the Knicks, so on and so forth. We focused on a lot of the high school stuff. We did a lot of Fordham stuff. We did a lot of Manhattan College. So yeah, then my first job in television was all sports. It had nothing to do with horse racing. In fact, I didn't think I was going to wind up in horse racing doing television. I thought I'd do mainstream. And in the end, again, the horse racing's it's like the mob. Like, you think you're getting out? No, you wind up right back in it one way or the other.
Right. It's tough to get away because it's thrilling. It really is. It's a great sport. It's frustrating, but it's so much fun, and you meet so many great people. And it's interesting. Every guest we've had has been the child of a legend in racing. Gabby's father, Eddie Gaudet's a very, very well-known trainer. Obviously, Jimmy Jerkins' dad, Alan Jerkins, and your father as well. Is it something where you just feel like having a father like that, is it positive and negative? Are there times where you think it's almost frustrating, or are you happy to be that your father was such a big person in the game? It
was so much fun watching him ride. The truth is, if your father is a basketball, football, baseball player, that their career is done before you understand what it is, what they do. Riders can do this longer into their careers. My father retired when he was 53 and doing very well at the time. It was a broken neck and an injury that forced him to retire. So as I got older, I got to actually watch him. It wasn't just a matter of reading old articles and watching old tapes. I got to watch him do it on a day-to-day basis. And I think that it at some point that becomes, his passion became my passion, and how excited I would get watching him win a big race. He won 7 Breeders' Cup races. I'll never forget, I was there for Phone Chatter's '93 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies win, And it was it was such an incredible experience because to a certain extent I felt I was shortchanged, that I was so young I didn't get to appreciate his one Derby,
Swale,
or his
right.
Swale, or his 3 Belmonts, all for Woody. If not for Woody, Dad never wins a Triple Crown race. So when I got to understand and appreciate what he did, and actually be there for it, yeah, sure, it was incredible. And by the same token, knowing how dangerous it was, every time he went down, if he had a spill, at the racetrack, the phone rings and somebody smart enough says, your dad's fine, but he had a spill.
Right.
Somebody else might say, I don't know how your dad is, but he had a spill, and that's absolutely terrifying.
Right.
If you happen to be there, yeah, there's nothing more terrifying than seeing, that when I witnessed several of his spills, it's so dangerous. So the irony is that it was a broken neck that gave him the opportunity to actually walk away from a sport that otherwise he was never going to walk away from. If he could have ridden until he was 130, he would have. That was the only way he was going to quit, so to speak. A broken neck that gave him the opportunity to walk away from a sport that he wouldn't have otherwise.
I hope he's enjoyed his life since then.
So much he's coming in tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he is. There's a
the jockey
autograph
legends.
signing
Oh, that's
on
awesome.
Saturday. So here's the wild thing, and I say this objectively. And a guy that had so much success during the course of his career, like, wow, life must have been so great. You were one of the greatest that ever took part in this particular occupation. And he didn't enjoy it because the guy was starving for 40 years. You can't enjoy life. It sounds stupid, but when you're hangry, like no matter what's going on, you're not happy. And he jammed that square peg into a round hole. He wasn't supposed to be a rider. Like, he absolutely forced
Well,
it.
he was
So
well known in that as much as any rider ever.
anybody else, an athlete, a baseball player goes 4 for 5 and hits a home run and has 5 RBI, go out, celebrate, have a ball, go out with your friends, have a few drinks. He couldn't do that. If
But
he
now
had
he can.
Now he can. And in his 70s, he's never been happier.
Laffit, thank you so much for joining us. Maybe you'll do it again.
Absolutely. Pleasure,
Pleasure.
Andy. Thanks, everybody.